The real fight after the 29th of May is going to see who gets third place. Because if I look at some of the polling and some of the more up-to-date polls and certainly some of the more reliable polls, it's going to be a fiercely fought fight between the MK party and the EFF for third place. And I think that's...
Yeah, so in this video, John Steenhuisen is actually making some bold claims about the EFF and the confrontation between the EFF and the MK party. Let's listen to what he has to say about the EFF here in this video, and I'll be back for some very interesting analysis. Yeah, so what do you guys think? I think, you know, this thing with the DA party and its opposition in South Africa, John Steenhuisen actually has been, he's kind of like a really bold politician, you know. He's
going forward. 1994 was about political freedom. 2024 is about survival for our democracy and for our country.
Yeah. Let me quickly talk about what I said in the introduction while I was on the other side about Floyd Shivambu of the EFF, seated where you are, last week, saying boldly that the EFF, if it doesn't make the #1 spot, it is most certainly going to become the main opposition in South Africa because this is scientific, he says, and it is based on, in part, the amount of youth support that they have managed to galvanize over time in the country. Are you worried of losing the main opposition status?
No, not at all. And I think you have every election, the EFF make these outrageous claims. The last election was that they were going to win. They were going to win all the metros. I think it's part of the bravado that they pull out before the election. The real fight after the 29th of May is going to see who gets third place. Because if I look at some of the polling and some of the more up-to-date polls and certainly some of the more reliable polls, it's going to be a fiercely fought fight between the MK party and the EFF for third place. And I think that's where they should be worried about because they may end up being the fourth largest party in parliament after this election, not the third.
If I didn't know, I would say you are gaslighting the EFF.
Not at all. It's polling. It's there. MK has surged ahead in provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng. You look what happened at Orlando Stadium. I can tell you right now that that is where the fight is going to be after the 29th of May. The DA will be the official opposition if we're not able to form a coalition government at a national level. And the fight will be between the EFF and Jacob Zuma, ironically, for that third place.
Yeah, so what do you guys think? I think, you know, this thing with the DA party and its opposition in South Africa, John Steenhuisen actually has been, he's kind of like a really bold politician, you know. He's really sharp to give responses and he really understands his craft really, really well, you know, in his description of the South African political landscape and all that. And his assumption of the fact that, you know, that the EFF would be striving for a third place or something like that, and that this confrontation between the EFF and the MK, for me, is really interesting because I've seen that most of Zuma's speeches have been in Zulu. I think that is his Zulu language, I think, I would believe, or you can correct me in the comments. But I really tried to find some of his speeches now, especially since he's come back in English, and I've been finding some. I'll be posting some of them on this channel. But I also found some snippets of the MK manifesto, the MK party's manifesto, which for me is really interesting to understand because I really want to understand the view, the worldview, the episteme by which the MK party wants to thrust back into South Africa's political landscape, being the fact that the Mkhonto Wesizwe goes way back into the early days of the ANC. But I really want to understand what its comeback manifesto actually represents. So I found their manifesto online. It's really easy to find, mkparty.org.za. And it speaks about the fact that the MK party is committed to transformational change across all sectors of South African society. And its policies are designed to address the most pressing challenges that South Africa faces today, such as economic inequality, inadequate access to quality education and healthcare, okay? And also national security threats, inequitable land distribution, and the need for robust traditional leadership and foreign policies that reflect South Africa's values and aspirations, right? And And so this is the MK Party manifesto. Some of its core pillars are the fact that it wishes to stabilize and expand the electricity grid. So the MK Party wants to extend the electrical grid to all corners of South Africa, ensuring enough capacity of power to power its industrial future, and also from raw material processing to manufacturing. The MK Party also wants to pursue sustainable electricity, meaning it wishes to continue to use and explore affordable and sustainable forms of electricity, prioritizing the benefit of South Africans. In terms of education, the MK Party wants to pursue a market-related skills approach, right? It wants to adopt a skills-first approach that meets market demands, ensuring education and aligning with the needs of the economy. It also wants to pursue an enhanced skills transfer, which enforces skills transfer based on shortages and imported skills, and curbing abuses in the higher education and sector, and also promoting relevant training within its borders. The MK Party also, in terms of national security, it wants to secure the borders by strengthening border security and reduce corruption, and also ensure South Africa's laws are respected and prioritized over foreign interests. In terms of legal and structural reforms, the MK Party wants to overhaul law enforcement agencies to improve efficiency and effectiveness in combating crime and corruption. So these are kind of like its policies. In terms of land redistribution, really interesting one. The MK Party wants to accelerate redistribution of land. So it wants to fast-track land redistribution policies while maintaining food security and increasing food exports, right? So it's not... This is in contradistinction to the EFF that really wants to expropriate land without compensation. But the MK Party wants to redistribute that land, but at the same time maintain food security and increase food exports, okay? And in terms of resource protection, the MK Party also wants to prevent the exploitation of South African resources by foreign entities and ensuring that wealth remains within South Africa. Right? In terms of healthcare policy, the MK Party wants to pursue an accessible and quality healthcare. It wants to ensure healthcare facilities are accessible and well-staffed and well-resourced, including alternative medicine options. It wants to explore the area of alternative medicine, right? Away from the hegemonic Western medicine tradition in South Africa. The MK Party also wants to improve infrastructure and staffing in the medical field, while it wants to improve healthcare infrastructure and increase the number of healthcare professionals. In terms of also economic policy, it wants to pursue job creation and economic growth by aiming to create 5 million jobs in 5 years. Many of you will say these are kind of like political language, political statement made during electioneering, that kind of thing, and all that. But anyway, the MK Party wants to create 5 million jobs in 5 years by focusing on sectors such as mining, agriculture, reindustrialization, tourism, and infrastructural development. It also wants to pursue an inclusive economic policy whereby it implements policies that clear growth impediments and maximize natural resource potential for the betterment of all South Africans. And for me, one interesting one also is its perspective on traditional leadership policy. So the MK Party wants to empower traditional leaders by strengthening the role and authority of traditional leaders in governance and community development. Just like in Ghana. In Ghana, for example, they have a ministry of chiefs, right? So it's a really important ministry in the cabinet where the chiefs have a say in the political effervescence of things and pulling in the perspective of the local community into decision-making in Ghana. So I think this is one of the things the MK Party wants to strive to achieve. It wants to also ensure the participation of traditional leaders in decision-making processes that affect their communities. And then finally, for foreign policy and regional integration, the MK Party wants to promote regional stability and cooperation by advocating for policies that promote peace and stability and economic integration within the SADC region and beyond. Asserting international presence also by ensuring that South Africa's foreign policy reflects its national interests and values, and advocating for fairness and mutual respect in international relations. So this is a brief overview of the MK Party's vision right? And how it probably might juxtapose some of the policies and the cardinal pillars of the EFF, which John Steenhuisen says that this the battle for the third place would be a battle between the EFF and the MK party. And in trying to analyze their visions for the nation of South Africa, we see that there are some points of friction and some points of collision in that regard. But whatever the case is anyway, I think the MK party has this really stronger focus on traditional leadership, which I don't know Julius Malema's relationship with traditional policies in that regard, but in terms of also the foreign policy, the MK party wants to strengthen the SADC region, while the EFF has a Pan-Africanist region where it wants African integration in totality, and then how that would play out in that fight for the third place, according to John Steenhuisen, would really be interesting to watch after May 29th. But anyway, this is kind of like the vision of the MK party. I've always been interested to understand what the MK party tries to pursue, especially now in its comeback in South African politics with Jacob Zuma. But what do you guys think about this speech? Share your thoughts in the comments.